Good morning. And grace and peace to you. Good to see everyone out here all chipper after your extra hour's sleep, right? There we go. Shirley and I were talking last night, and maybe somebody knows the answer to this. Who decided at what time of day the sun comes up? If you know what I'm talking about. Why is it 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. or 5 a.m.? Who determined that? It's kind of an arbitrary thing that somebody did somewhere, right? You know, back in the day, they didn't have a clock. The sun came up and you got up. And the sun went down and you went to sleep. Okay, that's off the subject. I got you thinking about something else. Let's turn to Psalm 105. We're going to start a series today, Lord willing, on Joseph. Just like our lives, Joseph's life took many twists and turns. Now, you can approach the study of Joseph in different ways, and we've chosen to do it this way. Now, we're going to bring in some thoughts about how he is a type of Christ, and many people approach the study of Joseph strictly from that standpoint. But I think there's a lot more to Joseph than that. And this is particularly for you young people, okay? And if you have children or grandchildren who aren't here, I encourage you to have them watch the video online so they can know what we're talking about. Because when all of this started with Joseph, he was 17 years old. And, you know, a lot of you are there right now, and a lot of you are going to be there very soon. And you're just learning about life. And some things in life are good, they're great. But some things are not. And we have to learn that that's the way life is. Because some people get so disappointed because their life isn't just a heavenly day every day and everything is just not great and good, that they just fall, I'll use the term we talk about there in the title of the lesson, into a pit, and they never get out of it. Because they don't know that there's evil in the world and you have to deal with it. Many people have had a hand in Joseph's life, some for good and some not for good. And again, for you young people, you have to understand that there will be a lot of people that affect your life. And already, you know, parents and grandparents, school teachers. But beyond that, you will meet other folks that affect your life. Some of them you will never meet. But that what they do and decisions they make will affect what you do. And so it's important to remember that. God also had a major hand in Joseph's life as well, just as he will in your life. Believe it or not, God is working in your life. He's already worked in your life. And you have to know that he wants good for you. Good in this life and good in the one to come. Let's look at Psalm 105, just kind of introduce that thought. This is about Joseph, Psalm 105:17. It says, he sent a man before them. This means God. There was a famine in the land, and this was also prophesied to Abraham that his people would be captive in Egypt, in another land for 400 years. And that's the way this all started. And Joseph was very instrumental in helping God accomplish his will. But it wasn't all good. It wasn't all fun. It wasn't all, well, we might say it was exciting, but it was not good exciting. It was troublesome. So he sent a man before them, meaning before the Israelites, Joseph, who was sold as a slave. They afflicted his feet with fetters. He himself was laid in irons until the time when his word came to pass. The word of the Lord tested him. The footnote says it refined him. Part of Joseph's life was wonderful, but a lot of it was not. As we're going to see in our lesson today, he was sold as a slave. But through that, God was accomplishing his will. Let's turn to Genesis 37. You may have already said it in your life. I'm talking to the young folks. The life's not fair. Well, sometimes it's not. But sometimes it is. In fact, sometimes it's better than fair. But this is life. And it always will be life. And the sooner we learn that lesson, the sooner we understand we have to deal with good and we have to deal with bad and learn how to deal with it with God's help. So we go to Genesis 37 to begin this lesson about Joseph. Now Jacob lived in the land where his father had sojourned in the land of Canaan. Jacob is Joseph's father. These are the records of the generations of Jacob. Joseph was 17 years of age, was pasturing the flock with his brothers while he was still a youth, along with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought back a bad report about them to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his sons because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a vari-colored tunic. His brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, and so they hated him and could not speak to him on friendly terms. Joseph was the 11th son of Jacob. As it says there, the son of his old age. He was also the son of Rachel, who was his truly beloved. Rachel has since crossed over, and she died when Benjamin was born. Joseph brings a bad report about his brothers watching the flock. I presume that's about how they did a poor job. It doesn't really tell us. But I'm sure he was just trying to help out his father because, that was their livelihood. Keeping the sheep, shearing the sheep, selling the wool, and whatever maybe meat they were sold from time to time. I don't know, it doesn't tell us if that got back to the brothers or not, that Joseph had given a report about them to their father. But what we do see here is that Jacob, or Israel, as he was also called, shows favoritism. He makes Joseph this vari-colored or multicolored tunic. Some older translations say the coat of many colors. Footnote says it was probably a full-length robe. This was confirmed as I was reading some of the history of the time, that a lot of people had these colorful robes during this period. And they often indicated a person of favor or a person who was in authority, because a robe that was full length was not a robe you could work in. It would get in the way of any kind of physical labor that you were going to do. And so it was kind of an indication here that, well, as we see, Joseph was favored by his father Jacob. Showing favoritism is not good. Parents, grandparents, it's not good. We understand that the children are different. If you have more than one, they must be loved differently, but none should be favored above the others. And as you can see here, Joseph's brothers saw that right away. And it caused them to hate their brother. Children can see and sense if one is favored over the other. I guarantee you they can. And so, again, this is one of the parental things that you have to be very careful of, because, some of them, they'll be just those nice little angels, right? They're just so good, they never get in any trouble, but beware. I guarantee you those angels have problems, and they will cause you problems sometime. But then you got the rascals over here, and you're always dealing with them, right? They're always doing this or that, getting in the way, getting in trouble, and you got to deal with them. But you got to be careful and not to show favorites. So we have this whole situation set up, and it just gets worse. We've heard of sibling rivalry. Siblings, that's brothers and sisters, for all you young folks. It can happen, doesn't always, but it can develop. You get the jealousy, and then you're treating him better, you're treating her better, whatever. And there's a lot of tension there. This really gets bad, and it's interesting that these are the people of God, but it really gets bad, the results of this favoritism. Let's look in verse 5. Then Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, "Please listen to this dream which I have had. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field," that would be sheaves of grain, for those of us who are not farmers. "And lo, my sheaf rose up and also stood erect. And behold, your sheaves gathered around and bowed down to my sheaf." Then his brothers said to him, "Are you actually going to reign over us? Or are you really going to rule over us?" So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. When there's this hatred, this resentment that's inside, anything that happens can just cause it to get worse. Many of us have experienced that, and that's what the situation was here. Back in the day, and you might still believe it, it's quite possible, dreams were seen to come from God. And in fact, God sent Joseph these two dreams that we're going to see here. He sent them to him. And it showed that God was going to do something in his life and with his life. But the brothers, instead of recognizing that this was a blessing to their brother, Joseph, wow, God's working in his life, something's going to happen here, they just get more angry at him because, what's God doing picking on you and letting you have the dream and not us? They just got jealous. This dream especially provoked them. Who do you think you are? You're going to rule over us? How does that make you feel? I didn't take the time to try to determine, and I don't know if you could from Scripture, what the year difference was within all the brothers, starting with Reuben, who was the eldest, and all the way down to Joseph and Benjamin. Could have been quite a few years. Could have been 20 years. So you can imagine some of these older brothers, and you got this the young whippersnapper, he's only 17. I'm 35. What's he? He's going to rule over me? Don't know about that. Verse 9. Now he had still another dream, and related it to his brothers, and said, "Lo, I've had still another dream, and behold, the sun and the moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me." He related it to his father and to his brothers. And his father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream that you have had? Shall I and your mother and your brothers actually come to bow bow ourselves down before you to the ground? His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the saying in mind. Again, we have this other dream with the father and mother now involved. The mother, of course, is already dead, but is that significant? Is that saying something about the legacy of the whole family? Later on we're going to kind of see how this develops, and of course most of you know the story. But even Jacob at this point is a little perturbed with his son, because Jacob, he's been blessed by God. He's had conversation with God, remember the ladder up to heaven and the angels and everything with his time getting his wives with Laban, and he's close to God. But now his son is having the dreams. And he's like, maybe you shouldn't be telling us this, Doesn't say what exactly he said to him. But it does say his father kept the saying in mind, because I'm sure his father understood that God was working somehow with Joseph, that the dream was from God. And so he's like, okay, we'll just have to see how this plays out, so to speak. So we see here that even though Joseph is doing nothing wrong, okay, right? Up to this point, in fact, if you read the whole story of Joseph, there just really isn't anything bad said about Joseph. He hasn't done anything wrong. He came and told the truth about his brothers. They weren't doing a good job. He's had a couple of dreams. He just related it and said, I had these great dreams, And so, and his father gave him the coat. What's he going to do about that? He didn't ask for it. So he's done nothing wrong, but all of a sudden, and how long it took this to develop, but he's hated by his brothers. They're jealous. And that hatred evidently is really deep and strong. And we just want to point out again, for all of us, but especially to you young people, sometimes life is like that. As we say, life isn't fair. You don't do anything wrong, but people end up not liking you. Maybe because you're too good. Maybe because you excel at something, whether it's sports or music or your grades. Maybe you're just handsome or beautiful. No fault of your own, but people just don't like you. And it can happen. And we have to learn how to deal with it. But remember, God is with you even in those situations. So don't give up. Don't get mad. Keep being yourself. Let's look at verse 12. Then his brothers went to pasture their father's flock in Shechem. That was evidently their task. That was their livelihood. Sheep and goats. Israel said to Joseph, "Are not your brothers pasturing the flock in Shechem? Come, and I will send you to them." And he said to him, "I will go." Okay, so I'll do what you say. I'll go check on them. Then he said to him, "Go now and see about the welfare of your brothers and the welfare of the flock, and bring word back to me." So he sent him away from the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. Now I did look on the map, and Shechem was a good ways away from Hebron, several miles. Okay, so he's wanting to know how they're doing up there. It's actually north of Hebron. 15. A man found him, meaning found Joseph, and behold, he was wandering in the field, and the man asked him, "What are you looking for?" And I wonder, well, let me finish reading that. And he said, "I'm looking for my brothers. Please tell me where they are pasturing the flock." And the man said, "They have moved from here, for I heard them say, 'Let us go to Dothan.'" So Joseph went after his brothers and found them in Dothan. I've often asked, why was that there? You know, I've said before, God doesn't just put filler in his book. Why is that little incident there that Joseph's here in Shechem looking for his brothers and can't find them, and you know, this fellow says, "What are you looking for?" And he said, "Well, they went to Dothan." Well, you see, if you look on your map, sometimes Bible study requires a map. It's further away. Maybe they were just trying to get away from Joseph's prying and spying on them, as they probably thought it was. We'll just move further. Maybe it was they needed better pasture. I don't know. But maybe they just wanted to get further away from Dad and from Joseph wearing his nice, beautiful coat and coming to see and check on us. That's my opinion. I kind of think that's what it was. Now, that's my opinion. But they went further away than what they said they would. In any case, Joseph is very diligent. And he goes and seeks out, and he finds his brothers in Dothan. But that's when it really starts to unravel, because they hate their brother. Verse 18. When they saw him from a distance, it almost makes you cry. And before he came close to them, they plotted against him to put him to death. Wow. Now that's some hatred. And they said to one another, "Here comes this dreamer." Boy, that was sticking in them, wasn't it? They couldn't stand he had those dreams. "Now then, come and let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits, and we will say, 'A wild beast devoured him.' Then let us see what will become of his dreams." But Reuben heard this and rescued him out of their hand and said, "Let us not take his life." Now you see, Reuben is the eldest, and he would have been responsible for them as a group out there, and responsible for his younger brother Joseph. So Reuben further said to them, "Shed no blood. Throw him into this pit that is in the wilderness, but do not lay hands on him, that he might rescue him out of their hands to restore him to their father." Now, again, I was reading some background here on these pits. I guess they had these pits out here in these areas. It's more like a cistern where they would collect water in the rainy season, so they would have water not only for the people, but also for the cattle. But evidently it was kind of a dry season, and this particular pit was empty. There was no water in it. 23. So it came about when Joseph reached his brothers, they stripped Joseph of his tunic, the vari-colored tunic that was on him, and they took him and threw him into the pit. Now the pit was empty without any water in it. Right away. Didn't even have a conversation. I don't know, evidently not. We don't even know what words were exchanged here. Joseph probably wondered what was going on. I'm sure he felt and knew that his brothers didn't like him, but I don't imagine he knew the level of hatred that they had for him, that they wanted to kill him. It's still hard to believe. Reuben wants to buy time. He said, "No, just throw him in the pit. Don't kill him," because he was going to sneak back somehow and get him out of the pit and take him back to his father. And I was checking on Reuben back in, I think it's chapter 33, it's before this anyway. Reuben had gone in and laid with one of his father's concubines, and Jacob knew about it. So I was just thinking about that. Is Reuben maybe trying to get back into the good graces of his father after he had done that evil deed? Because he wanted, I'm bringing back, I'll bring back Joseph to you. All the rest, I'm going to kill him, but I brought him back. I don't know. But evidently he didn't want him to die. He said, let's not kill him. He was going to come back and rescue him. Was Joseph surprised at what happened? I don't know. I kind of think he was to some extent, a feeling of disbelief rather, helplessness. Here's all his brothers. And, and again, we do not have any words, what they said to him, but they just took the coat and threw him into the pit. 25, then they sat down to eat a meal. Wow. You talk about being numb to your conscience. Yeah, we'll just throw our brother in the pit. We're going to get rid of him some way. It's time to eat. That's really something. And as they raised their eyes and looked, behold, a caravan of Ishmaelites was coming from Gilead with their camels bearing aromatic gum and balm and myrrh, on their way to bring them down to Egypt. Judah said to his brothers, what profit is it for us to kill our brother and cover up his blood? He's still thinking that's what they're going to do. Come and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him, for he is our brother, our own flesh. And his brothers listened to him. Well, good for you, Judah. I mean, that's kind of magnanimous there. We'll not kill him. We'll just sell him into slavery. As we were studying this morning, the lesser of two evils. Then some Midianite traders passed by, so they pulled him up and lifted Joseph out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. Thus they brought Joseph into Egypt. That was the going price for a slave at the time, 20 shekels of silver. Judah saves Joseph's life, but what kind of life was that going to be? They had no idea. And wonder what Joseph was thinking. Maybe someday we'll get to ask him, what were your thoughts when your brothers did this to you? 29. Now Reuben returned to the pit, and behold, Joseph was not in the pit, so he tore his garments. It doesn't tell us where Reuben went or why he went. But he had gone away to do something, and when he came back, Joseph's gone. He returned to his brothers and said, the boy is not there. As for me, where am I to go? He knows he was responsible. He was the eldest. The boy is gone. He had his thought he was going to rescue him, and now that's not possible. He says, he's really saying, what am I going to do? So that's really why they hatched the next plot, if you never saw that in the story before. So they took Joseph's tunic and slaughtered a male goat and dipped the tunic in the blood, and they sent the varicolored tunic and brought it to their father and said, we found this. Please examine it to see whether it is your son's tunic or not. And here we have, again, hatred, resentment, and jealousy causing them to pull this terrible ruse on their old father. That your son is dead. They couldn't tell what they really did. And they couldn't tell it was because of their hatred for their brother. Notice they asked the question, they don't say, is this our brother's tunic? They say, is this your son's tunic? You young people, sometimes it can be really bad. You don't know. I'm not trying to scare you, but sometimes life takes a bad turn. And you got to be ready. You got to be faithful to God, continue to do what's right, and understand God's going to bring you through it. Joseph is now on his way to Egypt, and his father thinks he's dead. Let's read on. Then he examined it and said, "It is my son's tunic. A wild beast has devoured him. Joseph has surely been torn to pieces." That's what he assumed, seeing the cloak with the blood on it. So Jacob tore his clothes and put sackcloth on his loins and mourned for his son many days. Then all his sons and all his daughters arose to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. And he said, "Surely I will go down to Sheol in mourning for my son," so his father wept for him. What? I can't imagine the brothers standing there and going about from day to day and watching their father in this horrible grief because of a lie that they'd perpetrated. That's just despicable. It's awful. Lies hurt, and lies kill. We got to be aware of that. Always tell the truth. They dishonored their father for showing his favoritism and for their hatred of their brother. And here again is something to beware of. One sin will lead you to another sin, which will lead you to another sin, and it won't stop until you stop sinning and repent of what you've done and decide to do what's right. It's just like the rolling stone going down the hill. We'll read the last verse. Meanwhile, the Midianites sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, Pharaoh's officer, the captain of the bodyguard. There's nothing really out of the ordinary here. This is, if you will, human nature. This is what happens when people sin, when we do wrong, when there's hatred, when there's jealousy. It still happens today. And so we need to be aware of it and stand against it. We have a father that shows favoritism. We have a son that does what he's told and is blessed by God with dreams, but the brothers grow resentful with hatred and jealousy. We continue next week, Lord willing. Just remember, life is not fair. Sometimes it's really good, and sometimes you get the pit. But hang with God, and He will bring you through it. God bless you.